Now we're ready to work the back panels for the pillow. There are two, back panel 1 and back panel 2, and we're going to work both of them with the size J or 10 or 6.00 millimeter crochet hook, and we start with our slip knot, and we are going to chain 34 chains. For row 1, we're going to double crochet in the third chain, so 1, 2, 3, the third chain from the hook, and in each chain across. At the end of row 1, you should have a total of 33 double crochets, and that is counting the chain 2 as a double crochet in that stitch count. Okay, now for row number 2, we're going to turn, and we're going to chain 2, and we're going to skip the first double crochet, and we're going to work front post, double crochet, and then back post, double crochet. We're going to work that all the way across the row, front post, and then alternate with a back post, front post, double crochet, and then back post, double crochet. We end this row with a front post, double crochet, and then a half double crochet worked right in that chain. Okay, now for row number 3, we're going to chain 2, and we begin with a back post double crochet since that last stitch was a front post. So we're going to do back post, and then front post double crochet, and then back post, alternating back and forth. Make sure as you work this that you're working front post over the front post and back post over the back post stitches. Okay, this row ends with a back post double crochet and then a half double crochet worked in that turning chain. We're going to chain 2, turn, and as we work row number 4 simply says repeat row 2, which is front post double crochet, back post double crochet all the way across the row, just like we've done before. Now we're going to start row number 5, but you're going to have to be careful there because for row number 5 with the front side facing, we're going to be working with front and back post treble crochets. That's the taller stitch. And for the row that follows that, we're going to be working with front and back post double crochets. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to chain 3 because we are using front and back post trebles instead of doubles. Okay, wrap the hook twice. We're going to do a back post treble and then a front post treble. Now we're going to work alternating back post and front post over the next 22 stitches, and these 2 stitches count as the first 2 in that count. So go ahead and work 22 front and back post alternating stitches. Okay, when you get those 22 stitches done, you should have 9 stitches plus the turning chain remaining. Okay, now the next stitches in the pattern, they listed as 2 over 2 back cross, and if you go read the directions in the pattern, you can see that specifically, but I'm going to try to explain it a little more simply to you here. This is a stitch called the wheat stitch. I'm just giving detailed explanation for those of you who haven't done the afghan that matches this pillow yet. Okay, we're going to skip these 2 stitches, and in the next 2 stitches we're going to work front post treble crochets, which isn't too difficult. Okay, now this is the more challenging part. Now we're going to work 2 front post trebles in these 2 skip stitches, but we're going to work them behind these stitches. So the best way to do that is to come in from behind in this hole right here, and then you're going to wrap your hook around that first skip stitch, and the easy way to do that is to just put your thumb up there and then use your tall man and the thumb to feel the correct stitch. Okay, and then we're going to do that to the next stitch as well. We're going to come in, and my thumb has this stitch right there, and we're going to work that front post treble crochet. I apologize if that's, you know, scary, difficult, but honestly, once you do it a few times and understand where these stitches should be, and I can even show you, see how these are front post trebles over those skip stitches, but they are actually behind these stitches. It takes a little bit of maneuvering first couple times, but then after that, I think once you understand it, you can use the nerve endings in your hands to really help guide your hook through that process. Okay, now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and we're going to work front post trebles in the next 2 stitches. Now this is an easier part, working in front of these 2 stitches. Go ahead and front post treble in the 2 skipped stitches. Now we have 1 more stitch to do, this back post double crochet. We're going to work a double crochet in that turning chain. That's a little bit different than what we've done with the half doubles, but go ahead and put a double crochet, and that helps to account for the height of this cable here. Now to begin row 6, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to front post double crochet in that first post stitch. Now we're going to work a back post double crochet over the next 8 stitches. This is with the back side to the cable that we formed at the end of the last row. And do make sure that you have 8 of these going forward, because that's going to be pretty important for the following rows. Okay, that's 8, I believe. Now after that, we're going to go back to our front post, back post, but we start with a back post and then a front post, and alternate that all the way across the row. This row ends with a front post double crochet, and then remember, when we work the double crochets, we're going to work a half double crochet in that turning chain. Okay, now we're going to turn, and let me give you the directions from here on, or at least for the next several rows. We're going to work rows 7 through 24, which simply says repeat last 2 rows 9 times. So we're going to repeat these last 2 rows 9 more times. And a good way to count this when you're done is you should have a total of 10 crossing of the cables. Okay, so go ahead and work through row 24, and then I'll show you what I have. After completing through row 24, you should have a piece that looks like this. And we should have, if you want to count with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 crossing of the cables in this wheat cable here. Now we're ready to begin row 25, and it says to repeat row 3. So we're going to chain 2, and just like we did at the very beginning with the ribbing, let me show you, just the very beginning down here, we're just going to work that ribbing all the way across so that it matches what we did at the very bottom. Okay, we're going to start with a back post double crochet, and then a front post double crochet, back post double crochet. Just to be clear, I'm going to go ahead and work this ribbing section over the cable. We worked the front post last, so now we work a back post, front post double crochet, back post double crochet, front post, etc. I just want to work this all the way across the row so that you're comfortable doing this as well. Okay, so we've worked that all the way across that ribbing portion, and then it matches up. We have a back post to complete the row, and then a half double crochet in that turning chain. I'm going to chain 2, turn for the next row, which is actually rows 26 and 27. For row 26, we're going to repeat row 2, which is essentially the same thing, except we start with a front post double crochet followed by a back post double crochet. And then after that row, we're going to work 2 more rows. We're going to repeat row 3 again, which is the row we just did, and then another repeat of row 2. So once we finish this, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of the ribbing. So go ahead and work those next 3 rows, this row plus 2 more. At the end of row 28, go ahead and fasten off. Go ahead and make a little chain, give it a tug, and go ahead and cut the strand. Go ahead and leave a nice long 4 to 5, 6 inches or so that you can weave those ends in later on. So let me go ahead and show you what the first panel, or panel 1, should look like. Okay, so let's go ahead now onto the directions for panel number 2. Okay, we're going to be starting with another slip knot. Okay, and the directions say to chain 34. Okay, we're going to double crochet in the 3rd chain from the hook, and in each chain all the way across. And as I crochet these double crochets, I just wanted to say that this piece is very similar to panel 1, with the exception that we will not be working that wheat cable. So this is going to be straight ribbing, but it's going to parallel what we did with the first panel, which means we're going to work front post and back post double crochets for the bottom ribbing part, and then the part where the cable appears, we're going to alternate between front and back post treble crochet and front and back post double crochet in the rows. And I'll go ahead and step you through that. I just wanted to let you know at the beginning just what we're going to be doing with this piece. So go ahead and finish those double crochets all the way across. At the end of the row 1 of the panel 2, you should have 33 stitches, and that does count the chain 2 as a double crochet. So now we're going to go on to row 2. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to begin our ribbing. We're going to skip the first stitch, and we're going to work a front post double crochet in that first stitch, and then we're going to work a back post double crochet in the next, and we're just going to alternate that all the way across the row. This row ends with a front post double crochet. Then we're going to work a half double crochet right in that turning chain. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to row number 3. We're going to chain 2, and row number 3 is going to begin with a back post double crochet and then a front post double crochet, and we're going to alternate that all the way across the row. Row 3 ends with a back post double crochet and then the half double crochet worked in the turning chain. So let's go on to row number 4, and row number 4 says to repeat row 2. So we will chain 2, and we will start this row with a front post double crochet and then a back post double crochet. So go ahead and alternate those 2 stitches all the way across the row. Row number 4, which is a repeat of row 2, ends with a front post double crochet and a half double crochet. Now for row 5, this is where we begin alternating between front post treble crochets and front post double crochets. To begin, we're going to chain 3, and we're going to begin with a back post treble crochet, and then follow that with a a front post treble crochet. So it's going to be a back post treble crochet and then a front post treble crochet. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row. Row 5 ends with a back post treble crochet. That's a back post treble crochet, and then a double crochet in the turning chain, just like we did in panel 1. Remember, when you're working the rows with front and back post treble, you're going to end on a double crochet for that turning chain. Now when we're working the front and back post double crochet, which is the shorter stitch, you're going to end with a half double crochet. Alright, so now let's go on to row number 6. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to work starting with a front post double crochet and then a back post double crochet. We're going to alternate those back and forth all the way across the row. Row 6 ends with a front post double crochet, and like I mentioned before, a half double crochet in that turning chain. Now for rows 7 through 24, we're simply going to repeat the last 2 rows. So go ahead and repeat row 5 and then repeat row 6. Do that a total of 9 times. So go ahead and do that. Go up through row 24, and then I will show you how to finish this piece. Okay, after working those 24 rows, you should have a piece that looks similar to this. And now for the last 4 rows, this would be rows 25, 26, 27, and 28. They're going to be worked by using front and back post double crochets. If starting row 25, for example, we're going to start with a back post double crochet. Now when you work row 26, which is a repeat of row 2, you'll start with a front post double crochet. That's the only difference. So go ahead and work 4 more rows using the front and back post double crochet. At the end of row 28, we're just going to fasten off, do a chain, and let's go ahead and leave a nice long strand. And this is what you have. This is panel 2. So now we need to go put these all together. Okay, now that we have all 3 panels, panel number 1, panel number 2, and the front side, we're ready to put these together to cover our pillow. But I wanted to mention one thing about the pillow. This was a white pillow form like you would buy at your regular craft supply store, and I went ahead and got some fabric that would match the color of the yarn that I'm using. Okay, and I went ahead and did a real quick cover. I'm not an expert seamstress by any stretch of the imagination, but you need to probably cover it with a color that's the same color as the yarn, or what'll end up happening is you'll get a lot of white showing through the dark, and it'll really obliterate the design on the front side of this. So something I just really highly recommend. It is optional, but I really highly recommend you do that. I think that will make things look a lot better in the long run. Now as we start to put these sides together, this is going to be a little unusual. We want the right side facing out. Okay, so we're going to have the back sides, I guess, facing in. We're not going to have to turn this pillow right side out. We're just going to go ahead and slip stitch all the way around it. So I'm going to go ahead and determine, let's see, I'll put this side here. This is panel 2. Panel 2 I'm putting on one side, and panel 1 I'm going to put this together, and when I overlap it, I want this cable, this wheat cable, to be showing. And this is where the buttons are going to come through. They're going to come right through these middle sections here once we get to that point. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clip these together. You can pin them together if you don't have these clips. I have these things called knit clips. I believe they're sold by the Susan Bates company, Coates and Clark. This is not a paid endorsement, but this is just something that I found at conferences years ago, and I love these things. This has kept the needles out of my carpet when I'm pinning things together, and my family loves them more than they know. Okay, so when we're doing this, we want to be careful as we slip stitch to line these stitches up very carefully. Okay, I'm going to do that more carefully as I crochet these across. And then go ahead and we want to clip this together. It's really important that you line up these stitches, especially on this side on with panel 2, because what's going to happen is in the middle these two are actually going to overlap about an inch or so. So go ahead and we're just going to roughly clip this together all the way around. And you're going to want to do it on the sides as well as on the other ends. And as you're slip stitching this together, just be careful to line up each row with each other. Okay. And along the foundation, and I did put the both sections that have the foundation chain, I kind of put those together. Okay, so I've kind of clipped this together. Okay, like this, and now we are ready to slip stitch it all together. And I would recommend, as you do this, I would slip stitch it with this side facing so that you are able to line these the meeting place up just as best you can. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Now we're ready to slip stitch this all together, and it's going to be a slip using slip stitch all the way around, but let me give you some guidance on how to do this. I'm going to go ahead and start with a slip knot, and then I'm going to put my hook through both loops. Let me also mention something about the hook. I am using a smaller hook now. I'm using a size I or 9 or 5.50 millimeter hook. Okay, this will help give it a little, make it a little tighter. I'm gonna go ahead and make a chain there for that first join, and then I am going to slip stitch by working through both loops of both pieces, and go ahead and do an additional 21 slip stitches. Okay, so there should be the join, which is right here, plus 21 more slip stitches. So go ahead and do that part, and then I'll show you what to do after that. After working those 22 slip stitches, now we're actually going to be working through 3 pieces of fabric. Now make sure that the cable part is on the outside as we do this. So we're going to stick our hook in that panel on the back side, and then we're going to slip it through another back panel, and then the front panel. So it's going to be through really 6 loops. So go ahead and pull that through all 3. We're going to do this for 11 stitches. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make sure we're going to another stitch here. 7, 8, 9. Well, it looks like I've got 10, but 10 or 11, that honestly is close enough. Actually, let's go ahead and make it 11 because we do have the turning chain. So go ahead and do that in 11 stitches. That way my math holds. Okay, now we continue on with the rest of this, just working through 2, and you should have 22 of these left. So you're just working through the other back panel and the front panel, working through those 2 sections. So go ahead and finish the next 22 slip stitches all the way across. Okay, once we get to the corner, we're going to go ahead and turn, and now we're going to be slip stitching along the long side. And what I would encourage you to do is to just be careful that you are actually slip stitching in the last row or the last stitch of the row as you go across. Go ahead and get that strand out of the way. So as far as working this, it's whatever works best for you. It may look like I might do let's say one slip stitch for the first, and then maybe 2 for the next row. When you get to the treble crochets, you may have to do a little bit more, and that's okay. The goal here is just to make this slip stitch look as even as possible as you go along. So I'm going to actually do 2, I think, for that row. Now maybe 1 for the next, and then 2. I think that's actually going to work well for me. This is there's no hard set rules for how you slip this together. The goal here is to be as neat and as even as possible. So go ahead and work your way down that side using the slip stitch. As I've slip stitched all the way across that side, I'm going to end down that side by working a slip stitch in the first stitch, or the of both foundation rows. Okay, now I'm going to turn actually 90 degrees, and I'm going to slip stitch across the bottom. This is slip stitching those 2 foundation chains together. And if you have a hard time finding which stitches, just look for the double crochet and then pick up all of that material opposite of that. So go ahead and slip stitch for about 21 stitches. Okay, the turn back here we're going to count as stitch 1, so that plus 21 more slip stitches. After completing the turn, which counts as the first of the 22 slip stitches, so that is 1 plus 21 more slip stitches, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do both sides together. Now as you do that, make sure again that the cable is on the outside. Okay, I'm going to have a stitch or a strand to hide there, so I'm going to go ahead in that first strand. This is a little cumbersome, and we're going to go in the next stitch and the next stitch and go slip stitch. So that's 1. We're going to do this about 11 times. Okay, that's 2. Make sure you're really careful where you put the hook here. So that's 3. And 4. So let's see, and then 5. 6. 7. 8. It may end up being 10. Okay, 9. And then we're just going to actually look like 10. Okay. So we ended up with 10 stitches there. If you're off by one, it really, really doesn't matter here, because this is the back side of the pillow and this is the part where the buttons are going to close. So that's actually close enough. All right, so now we're going to just slip stitch using those two sections over the next approximately 22 stitches. So after working that all the way across that foundation side of the pillow, we're going to go ahead and repeat what we just did on the other side by slip stitching these sides together, and I'm just going to continue on doing that. So go ahead and slip stitch that final side together, and then we'll be ready to put some buttons on this thing. Okay, once we've gone all the way along that side with the slip stitch, just go ahead and join one more to the corner. I'm going to go ahead and give that a chain, and I'm going to fasten this off, leaving a nice long strand. Okay, now we have some finished business to do on this. I'm going to show you how to hide some of these strands real quickly. I'll show you one, and of course there will be several others to hide before we slip the pillow in and put the buttons on. So we can actually do this. I prefer to do this on the wrong side, but it's okay if we do it with the right side here. You can just run these down into the stitches. Carefully, try not to split the stitches here. Okay, and then we can just, once we've run them down into that for a little bit, go ahead and give it a clip. Make sure that you don't clip the stitches, but you're just clipping the extra strand here. And let's go ahead and get some buttons. Okay, the next thing is getting ready to sew on some buttons. Let me just show you some possibilities here that I have for this project. And I think the best way to determine whether you like buttons or not is to see what they look like against the fabric and what your personal preference is. Okay, sometimes if you have a button pattern, you know, sometimes if you just flip it over, the back side might actually look better. This is what I've decided upon. I had some buttons like this in my stash for quite a while, and you know, that's okay. It's a little busy, but if I flip it over, doesn't that look nice, that rich wood color? I'm kind of have more of a preference towards the natural looks here, so I'm going to go with these two buttons, and let me show you where we're going to put them. So here's the back center. And so what I would do is just find the two places in the center, kind of so that it divides the pillow into thirds, and then just go ahead and sew them on. Now if you, or sew them, actually they're going to be sewn to the panel here, which is the panel number 2 that we did without the cable, so that they can actually come through the cable like this. Now I'm actually going to use yarn to sew them on. Now if the holes inside the buttons that you choose is not large enough for yarn, then you can use you know, regular sewing thread and the needle, but I actually decided to go with a darning needle, which is a little bit sharper than a yarn needle, because it will easily put the yarn through the button. So I'm going to go ahead and sew my buttons onto this panel right now. Okay, now that we've finished sewing these buttons on to the second panel, panel 2 on the back side, let's go ahead and we can insert our pillow form. Okay. And you can easily pull these buttons through the center of the cable. Go ahead and straighten it out. Might have to fluff it a bit. Okay, so now we have our Yule Tree matching pillow. Okay, and that's the front. And if you don't want to look at the tree, you might want to just look at the back side. That could also be very decorative. Another thing about the Yule Tree pillow is it doesn't have to necessarily be a Yule tree. You can make this in any number of colors and use it throughout the year for your home decor and what have you. Well, now that we're done with this, if you like this project, I just asked if you could just hit that little subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber, and that way you won't miss any of the good content that'll be coming your way all year long. God bless. Bye-bye.